Hi, this is Mrs. Elliott, and we are here to learn about the second part of Chapter 2 in What Are Data. And first, we're going to talk about two types of variables. So we have categorical or quantitative variables. So let's just jump right into the definitions. So first up, when a variable names categories and answers questions about how cases fall into those categories, we call it a categorical variable. Okay, so the key here is names or describes how it falls into these categories. When a measured variable with units answers questions about the quantity of what is measured, we call it a quantitative variable. These are both about what we hope to learn about the variable. They're more about what we want to learn about the variable than about the variable itself. So it's more of a way to describe the variable of what our outcome is from the variable than just what the variable is in itself. So if the values of a variable are words rather than numbers, it is a good bet that it is categorical. But there's a big but here. Some variables can answer both kinds of questions. So if it isn't clear whether a variable is categorical or quantitative, you need to think about why you are looking at it. And what you want it to tell you. What do you want it to tell you? Okay? All right, next. Counts count. So, all right, in statistics, we often count things. There's no surprise there. We use counts in two different ways, though. When we count the cases in each category of a categorical variable, the category labels are the what, and the individuals counted are the who of our data. The counts themselves are not the data, but something we summarize about the data. They are something we summarize about the data. Okay, so a lot of times we see the numbers and we think that is the data. No, these are a way that we're describing the who and the what. Now, other times our focus is on the amount. It is on the amount of something. And obviously we measure that by counting. All right, identifying identifiers. You will want to recognize when a variable is playing the role of an identifier so you won't be tempted to analyze it. For example, your social security number. Another example, a UPS tracking number. Or your student ID number. Okay? You don't want to look at your student ID number and analyze it for its value. The only value it has is it's a way to identify you. Those numbers are just there. They don't mean anything but a simple code to identify you. All right, we haven't talked about the when and the where in our last notes, so here we go. And we're also going to talk about how. We must know the who, what, and the why to analyze data. So we've talked about that in our last notes. That's up from the get-go. Without these, we don't have enough to even start. But if possible, it'd be great to know the when and the where of data, all right, if possible. For example, if the data was collected in 1803 versus 2017, that will make a difference in how we look at our data. Also, if we collected our data in Tanzania versus the US, that also will affect how we look at our data or interpret it. How the data are collected, so here's our how. If we know how the data is collected, we don't always know that, but if we know how, that can also be the difference between actual insight or just complete nonsense. Okay. Voluntary surveys are almost always worthless. And an example that I can think of off the top of my head is if I were to Google greatest movies of all time, there's a particular website where people are constantly able to get on there and vote. But let's just face it, while I've watched a lot of movies and love movies, and you probably have as well, we're both not movie critics. And so people are getting on there and voting on movies, and they're actually not paid movie critics. So those surveys to me would be worthless, and I probably wouldn't want to visit them to figure out what the greatest movie of all time is. All right, so let's kind of summarize everything. Whenever data are introduced, here's what you need to make sure the checklist you want to go through. Know why you are examining the data. Okay, what do you want to know? Okay, why are you looking at this particular data? Who each row of your data table refers to. Who each row of your data table. Okay, so remember your rows represent your who. So who are you talking about? And finally, what the variables. You need to know. Pen has stopped working right at the end of my video. So I'm going to talk this to you. Know what the variables or the columns of your table record. So I'm going to repeat that again. Know what the variables record. Make sure you know all three: who, why, and what. Okay? Who, why, and what before you show or tell anything about your data. So if you're going to get up in front of the class and share your information, before you do so, you must have answered who, why, and what, or you have nothing to share. All right, sorry about the pen not working. Here we go. Last slide, I don't need to write anything, so I'm just going to talk. Things to remember: don't label a variable as categorical or quantitative without thinking about the question you want. Okay, so from the get-go, think about the question you want to answer, because the same variable can sometimes take on different roles. Just because your variable's values are numbers, don't assume that it's quantitative. Look at the context. Don't let that fool you into thinking that just because they have numerical labels that it has quantitative meaning, okay? Finally, always be skeptical, just like I was talking about the movie critics. You don't know who conducted the survey. You don't know how the data was collected. And we analyze data to discover the truth. So we're always going to be skeptical to make sure that our information is unbiased and taken as carefully and as detailed as possible. All right, this ends our second part of our data notes for Chapter 2. And until next time, I'm signing off.